Black champions, roll 23.
Curt, I wonder if we could start off by getting you to do a little reminiscing. Would you talk about growing up in Oakland? It's a city that's produced a number of outstanding athletes. In addition to yourself, Bill Russell is from Oakland, Veda Pinson, Frank Robinson. What kind of an atmosphere did you grow up in?
Well, that is so interesting because we are predominantly a small town in Oakland, and to have the first black manager in baseball and the first black coach in basketball, and to have so many outstanding athletes come out to such a small area, Clayton, is really quite unusual. And I do imagine it's because of the interest that adults had in the youngsters as I grew up. And one especially, here is a white guy who coached the first black manager in baseball and the first black coach in basketball, and it is a tribute really to the interest that he really had in kids. There's one thing about being from the ghetto, I guess. We are all kind of protected there, and you never really run into the kind of prejudice that you run into when you leave this little segregated area. And how this white guy got in and out of the ghetto night after night to teach and to be a part of our lives, I just have no idea. But it is really interesting. I guess it's the weather. We are able to play baseball and basketball and whatever year round. I guess it's the need to get out of there, and one of the ways that the means that we have of escaping the ghetto is through sports. And it was interesting. I had a chance to play 11 months out of the year in Oakland, California, and I guess that made a much better athlete out of myself.
Describe young Curt Flood. What kind of a kid was he?
Well, I guess if I had to draw a profile of me, I would start with I really wanted to learn, be it scholastically or as an athlete. And I could see that I was not ever going to be large enough to play football or tall enough to play basketball, so I chose baseball. I was a good student. I faced reality in as much as I knew that there weren't many places in athletics for a person that have a look at me. I'm 5'10", and I knew that I would have to do well in school if I wanted to succeed at all. So I really hit the books, Clayton, and I really thought it necessary to do well in school, and I did not neglect. I did not let athletics stand in the way of my getting good grades.
What sort of family life did you have, Curt? Did you have brothers, sisters?
Yeah, I'm the youngest of 6, and we were lucky. We had both of our parents. My mom and dad lived with us, and we were fortunate for them to have jobs, and we were fortunate for them to love us and to be a part of our lives. And
We have to stop just for a moment.
okay.
Roll 23, take 2.
Curt, tell us a little bit about your family life and growing up in Oakland.
Well, Clayton, I was very fortunate. I am the youngest of 6 children, and very fortunately we had our mom and dad together, which is quite unusual nowadays. And I guess we weren't poor, but we didn't have a lot. We had a lot of love and a lot of understanding from our parents. They both worked very hard. My father worked several jobs so that we could have all the things that he thought important to us. And I guess I was in and out of trouble as much as any youngster back during those days, and very, very fortunately, I saw the light early, and I straightened my life out and got myself going in the right direction. And it wasn't easy for us. Our parents didn't make a lot of money, but they made sure we had all the things that the kids in our peers had, if nothing more.
Did your neighborhood have a name? Was there a nickname for the part of town you lived in?
Yeah, the ghetto. We lived in West Oakland, and which is that part of Oakland where it is 99% black and 100% poor. But we didn't let that stop us. We enjoyed. We were able to make it.
Did you have any childhood heroes or the people you really looked up to as you were growing up? People maybe you wanted to emulate?
Well, yeah. Of course, Jackie Robinson was the hero of my era, and young Martin Luther King at the time, and I had several teachers that were important to me. I think I mentioned George Poles, the baseball coach, that kind of took us under his wing and gave us a chance to play baseball. And he'd pick us up on Saturdays, and even as a child at 8 or 9 years old, he'd pick us up on Saturdays and make sure we were at the right place at the right time. And more than anything else, keep us out of trouble.
Were you very competitive? I guess coming from a family of 6, you're probably pretty competitive.
But just in order to eat, right, you had to be very competitive. But yeah, I guess so. I was always the smallest in the crowd, and being the smaller of a group of thugs like we were back then, you really had to stay on top of it. And I was always the last one chosen, whatever the sport was, and I really had to stay on top of my little game.
How old were you when baseball really began to play a significant role in your life?
Well, I guess into high school, Clayton. I up until that point, it was just something to do for fun. But after I got into high school, I found there was much more to it than that. I found that there was a professionalism to this game that I've been playing for so long, and I felt that I had a chance. As small as I was, and as light as I was, as you know, I went to high school with Frank Robinson and Veda Pinson, and they had graduated on into professional sports with the Cincinnati Reds at the time. And I thought I really had a pretty good chance of playing professional baseball.
What do you remember about your earliest days in organized ball? How did you get, for example, from your high school career in Oakland, what was the transition into organized ball? Did somebody scout you?
Yeah, right. As a matter of fact, the same guy that signed Frank Robinson and Veda Pinson signed me, as a matter of fact. And it is really interesting that all the money that's being made in sports today, they signed Frank Robinson and Veda Pinson and myself, all three of us, for $4,000 apiece, for $12,000. And they had all of us at one time in the outfield, and they really didn't have any idea what they had. As a matter of fact, I was traded to to St. Louis, because they had Frank Robinson and Veda Pinson in the outfield. But a scout named Bobby Maddox signed all three of us. And the transition wasn't an easy one. Even though I lived in the black ghetto, I was not aware of the incredible amount of dislike people have for you until I started playing baseball. My first year, I played in High Point, Thomasville, North Carolina, and here's a kid out of California, you know, who wasn't sure what it meant to use a black water fountain, or to go into a black entrance, or to be sit in the back of the bus. And in 1956, boy, it was really tough. They were they were trying to desegregate the schools, and it was quite a transition for me.
Describe for us, if you will, Curt Flood, the ball player who entered baseball there in North Carolina. What kind of player, looking back now, how would you describe yourself if you were maybe giving a scouting report on young Curt Flood?
Well, here's a guy that really tries hard, and for what it's worth, will give you 100% of his talent. I had probably one of the greatest years that anybody could have under the circumstances. I think I led the league in everything, with the exception of home runs my first year. And the numbers and the statistics were just amazing. I amazed myself under all of those adverse circumstances, you know, to have that kind of a year.
Roll 24.
Hold it. Take it.
Roll 24, take 3.
Okay.
We were talking about your first years in organized ball. You played in North Carolina, and you had a pretty phenomenal season, but I would imagine that there was a lot more to it than just playing baseball.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was thrown out there into the real world almost immediately. It was all right as long as we were at home, but as we played in Danville, Virginia, and throughout the South and Savannah, Georgia, the ugly head of prejudice would always rise its ugly head, I guess, and it was not easy on anybody. It was just as hard on the white kids on my team as it was on me. I was the only black on the team, and wherever we went, they had to construct a cubicle for me, because we were not allowed to dress together, or whenever we would go into a town, we'd have to stay at a black hotel, or they would generally find a residence in the black section for us. And it was some interesting. I thought I could take all of that, you know. But one day we were playing Clayton in North Carolina, and they had to send our laundry out. Well, you take off your uniform, you throw them into a nice little pile so they can take your laundry out, right? And this clubhouse equipment manager, very carefully, with great stealth, did he take a stick and separate my baseball clothes from the white guys, because mine had to go to a black cleaners and theirs had to go to another cleaners. And it was an eye-opening experience to, you know. I'm glad I was able to do that, because I feel more mature for it. I feel much more rounded, and I guess as I grew into a Major League Baseball player, it made a better person out of me.
How many years did you spend in the minor leagues?
I was lucky. I played 2 years. I played at Savannah, Georgia, and High Point, North Carolina, but I played in South America for 2 years during the winter too. So maybe you might call that 4 years in the minor leagues. I don't know, but. Then I was traded in 1957, the winter of 1957, I was traded to the Cardinals. And I sat around a lot. I sat all of 1958. And then in 1959, I was given a chance to play. Bob Gibson and I was sitting over there by, you know, wondering, you know, what this is all about. So we finally got a chance to play in 1959.
Who would you describe as the greatest influence on your career at this point, during the period you were in the minor leagues and moving into the major leagues? Was there an individual, or were there a number of people who were particularly influential in the development of your career?
I think so. I have to go back to my high school coach, who even after I became a professional baseball player, I continued to play for him in the semi-pro leagues back home. And after I was traded to the Cardinals, George Crow, an old baseball player, kind of took me under his wing, and he made a real good hitter out of me. And I guess more than anything else, his philosophy of life and his ability to stay on top of his game and to perfect his craft made a tremendous impression on me.
Do you think that there is a difference between that atmosphere and the atmosphere you may find in professional baseball today? I mean, you talk about people working to perfect a craft, people being concerned perhaps with the extraordinary number of details that make up a professional baseball player's craft. Is it different now, or people pay less attention to that?
I think so. When you talk to any older baseball player, he will say that when he played it was more difficult, or when he played it was more or less this or that. But it has changed so radically because of the incredible amount of money that's being made right now that we have lost sight of what this is really all about. Baseball is probably one of the greatest entertainment things in the world, I think. And we've forgotten that to perfect this, to perfect your craft and to put on a good show and to make whatever the person that's buying a ticket, whatever he's paying for, make it worth his while. We've lost that someplace in the shuffle, you know, of the big moneyness and the big business of the whole thing. And that's too bad, because I work for the A's now, and I see these young kids that come to the major leagues without the tools. All the things that we learned in High Point, North Carolina, and Savannah, Georgia, they're learning at a major league level. How unfair of us to perpetrate this on our fans. I don't know. It's changed so radically. That's unfortunate.
Let's talk a little bit about the other time. You played for the Cardinals from the 1958 season through 1969, a period of 12 years, 12 seasons. You played in three World Series championships. That, on the surface, would sound like a very successful career. How do you remember it?
Well, I again remember men who really took a great deal of pride in what they did and in winning. All of the little things that we could do as a team, more or less on the field, but not necessarily. In order to function as a unit, you have to really become a family, more or less. And I very carefully surrounded myself with superstars, which is...
If not Curt Flood, name your favorite Cardinal players.
not easy. I was lucky. You have to be a little lucky, too. I had Bob Gibson, Lou Brock, Orlando Cepeda, Roger Maris, Stan Musial, people that are going to eventually end up in the Hall of Fame. And it's not by accident. These guys would come to the ballpark at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and work on something. As I said, I work for the A's. It's tough to get the guys that I'm with now to be there in time for batting practice. There's just a different attitude, a different philosophy of it. The talent, the raw talent of a Bob Gibson will assure you that you're not going to go into a losing string of more than 3 or 4 games. He's going to come in and shut the door. We had Steve Carlton, we had Jerry Royce. We didn't even know what he did. Now he's one of the great pitchers with the Dodgers. And as I said, it's just no accident. These guys really worked hard at being the champions. And very fortunately, we did something that it's just not, it'll never be done again. I lived during a period of time of Willie Mays and Roberto Clemente and so many great athletes. It'll never happen again.
I hear you saying that the whole concept of championship, or the whole concept of being a champion, may be a thing of the past, that now there isn't that great personal pride in the craft. There is personal pride in being able to earn a lot of money in whatever way you can earn.
Well, unfortunately, I'm afraid you're absolutely correct, and that's too bad, because the key is the money, because in theory, the money that we're talking about that's going into personal bank accounts would, in theory now, Clayton, go into our minor league system. We have 3 minor league clubs now, whereas at one time we had 20. Where is the talent going to come from if it does not come from from the minor leagues? And I don't know, the picture, I don't like the way the picture looks.
I had a conversation some years ago with Frank Robinson, and he said that, in fact, college baseball was all but replacing the minor leagues. How do you feel about that?
Well, that's great, because not only do they get a chance to learn their craft, but they're going to school as well, and because doing what I did, it's 1 in a million. There are millions of kids out there that will never that want to play baseball, that are involved in it in either Little League or semi-pro or American Legion, that will never play at the Coliseum. So you have to educate yourself. You have to keep that what's inside your head. You'll never lose that. But it's 1 in a million. It's good that they get a chance to go to college as well.
Someone comes to you, let's say theoretically, and says, I've got a 12-year-old kid, and he wants to play baseball. I don't want to encourage him unless I think he's got a real shot at it. What would you look for? Took him out on the field, we went out to the park, and you had him run through some paces. What kind of things would you be looking for before you'd encourage somebody to track into minor league or college and eventually professional baseball?
Well, I guess speed is probably the only thing that I couldn't teach him. You can never teach anybody to be any faster. Coordination, you can't teach that either. I could probably teach him how to be a good hitter, or a better hitter at least. But those 2 things is what they look for in the beginning. Can he run? Okay.
Let's come back to that.
Okay.
Roll 25, take 4.
Curt, I wonder if you'd tell us about any personal feelings you had after the first time you'd played in the World Series. Was that, I mean, obviously for a baseball player, any kid who plays baseball in America, that's the epitome, that's the place you're headed. What was it like for you personally?
Well, it was the climax of a lot of hard work, and I don't really think I can put that feeling in words, Clayton, because first of all, let me give you a little background. In 1964, the Philadelphia Phillies, they were 10 games in front, almost with less than 15 games to play, and we were out of it. We were absolutely out of it. August Bush had fired our manager. He had hired Leo DeRocha to manage, and we won something like 15 games out of 15, and Philadelphia lost about 11 in a row. And all of a sudden, on the last day of the season, we had a chance to get into the World Series. And as you say, it's from the time you are in the Little League, this is where you really want to be if you're going to be a baseball player. The Yankees had already won, so we won the pennant on the last day of the season, and to walk into Yankee Stadium here in New York with Roger Maris and Yogi Berra and Mickey Mantle and all of the characters of that era is I can't put the feeling into words. It's just even a 5'10", you feel about 8 foot tall, right? And all of these ghosts of Babe Ruth rattling around in the all over that old stadium in the Bronx, and how wonderful it was. Bob Gibson had an incredible series. I think he won 3 out of the 4 games we had to win, and that was the year that Lou Brock came to the Cardinals, and so many pieces of this little puzzle fit together that made it such a special feeling for all of us.
Baseball has an unusually long season. I mean, you really play a lot of games. I think Pete Rose a number of years ago, when they talked about the relative salaries of players, he said, you have to remember, we play 162 games.
True.
Basketball, it's 82. Football, it's 16. That's a long time from the spring to the fall. What kind of things happen over the course of the season? What do you go through emotionally? What are the ups and downs physically? How do you keep yourself motivated, keep yourself in physical shape?
That is, all of those things are difficult. The motivation of staying in shape is the key, and I firmly believe that the time that we spent in spring training was the critical time. At this level of athletics, I think that it's the team that fields their best 9 men all the time throughout those 162 games, and the team that makes the least amount of mistakes is the team that's going to end up in the World Series with the money. Emotionally, it's draining. It's really tough on your families too. Being gone 77 days out of the year, at least 77 days out of the year. The incidence of divorce and separations in baseball it would astound you. But this is we have to do that. We understand that we have to be away a lot. We have to continue to kick ourselves in the rear ends and to kick each other in the rear ends, and to really stay on top of it if you're going to be successful at it at all.
Curt, after 12 years of this kind of emotional turmoil, perhaps this kind of pressure on yourself with the St. Louis Cardinals, in 1969, the Cardinals trade you to the Philadelphia Phillies. First, how did you find out about the trade, and can you remember what your initial reaction was like?
Well, they called me on the telephone. First of all, one of Mr. Bush's lieutenants, and he said that I had been traded, and I guess it was for Richie Allen, and that they were sorry to see me go. Goodbye. But then the next day, this is how insensitive baseball probably still is. I don't know how they do it now, but I got an index-sized card in the mail, and it said my name and my contract number, such and such, has been, and then there are 5 possibilities that you can be traded, sold, optioned, or whatever, and they checked traded. You know, after 12 years, you would think that there would be a little more camaraderie, if nothing else, a little more friendship. But it is a very insensitive and very businesslike means that they choose to do that. And I guess I mentally prepared myself for it from the time I start playing baseball, because you always feel that at some time or another it's going to happen to you. You're going to be one of those. They're going to check one of those boxes on you. And initially I thought, well, I guess I'll go to Philadelphia. And then I thought about it for a while, and I ran all of the things that have happened, not only to myself, but to my colleagues and my peers and my business acquaintances in baseball. And I guess why did I want to do that? I knew that the reserve clause in my contract was illegal, and I thought that I was the one to make the difference in our contracts, I thought I was wealthy enough, I thought I was intelligent enough, and I thought I had the morals enough to do that.
You said something very interesting just now. You said you knew that the reserve clause was illegal. How did you know that?
Well, it had been challenged before, and the guy, I forget the guy's name, I guess I don't know what ever happened to him, but the reserve clause in the contract has always been challenged to some degree or another. But baseball has always gotten around it by not calling our contract a contract. See, very legally, a contract must have a beginning and an end. But the reserve clause perpetuated this year after year, even though you only had a one-year contract. That clause in your contract perpetuated it until you died. As a matter of fact, if they resurrected Babe Ruth, the Yankees would still own him. That's how ironclad that clause in the contract was. So I spoke with several of my friends, one of which was a lawyer, and he said that you really ought to have a chance to work any place in America that you want to. This is America. And if you were a plumber, they certainly couldn't stop you from going someplace else to plumb. And I agreed with him. And in many instances, Clayton, people have said that I didn't want to go to Philadelphia, which has Philadelphia has nothing to do with anything. I think that wherever it was they wanted to assign my contract, I would not have gone. In as much as I wanted to see what my talent was really worth on the open market, and very fairly, I should have had that opportunity.
You, subsequent to this, initiated a court action. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came together? How was the decision made specifically? And I believe the court action was against both the Cardinals and against Major League Baseball.
Yes.
How was all that generated? How did your friend advise you to proceed from this point?
Well, that's, golly, I'll have to go way back into my little floppy disk here, because at that time, no one was really sure exactly how these 26 millionaires were going to react to my suing them. So what I really needed was the rest of the players on my side. So we called a meeting with all the player representatives in, let's see, where were we, in Mexico City or somewhere? No, we were in Puerto Rico. And you have to understand the naivety of baseball players at that time. We thought getting $20,000 a year was a fair share of this incredible amount of revenue that's being made in baseball. And I can think of several real superstars who were at this meeting. Reggie Jackson, I imagine, was getting 30 grand a year for this enormous talent that he had. So anyway, make a long story short, I addressed this meeting of the player representatives, and I told them that what I was going to do. I was going to take this as far as my money would allow me to take it, and it isn't.
Let's go right when we come back.
Camera roll 26, take 5.
Curt, let's go back again to this period when you've made the decision that you are not going to have yourself bought and sold like a piece of beef in the market. And among the other things that you do is you get together with the player representatives of Major League Baseball, and you have a meeting. Let's talk about that meeting. Where it took place and who was there.
The meeting was in Puerto Rico, and it's a little sketchy now, Clayton, but I remember Tom Haller was there, and Reggie Jackson was there, and Orlando Cepeda was there. Jim Davenport was there. All of the player representatives were there, and I wanted to get a feeling of what I was really getting myself into, and if I was going to get their support or not. And I firmly believe right now that if 3 of these people would have said, okay, we're on your side, we're not going to play unless we make this better or more, pardon me, equitable for the athlete. Well, I left them with all of my ideas. You know, at that time, we didn't have a pension fund. We didn't have a cost of living escalation clause in our contracts. At that time, the minimum salary was $15,000 a year or thereabouts, and with this enormous amount of money being made in television, we were getting the very short end of a very long stick. So I came back to the States, and I came here to New York, and I spoke with Marvin Miller, who was the executive director of the Players Association at the time. And he said, "Curt, I want you to go back to California, and I want you to think about what you're getting yourself in for, because this is going to be a fight to the finish, if in fact that's what you want." And I guess there's something about suing the kind of people that own baseball teams that's kind of frightening. These are really powerful men. Not only do they own baseball teams, but they own everything else in this hemisphere. So I thought about it for a while, and I recalled some of the horror stories that I'd been confronted with in baseball, with men getting traded in between doubleheaders, men learning that they've been traded on the way to the ballpark, men being traded from one clubhouse to the other, and I knew that at one time in a baseball player's career, he really ought to have a chance to own himself. And I guess more than anything else, that was the motivation for it.
How did the suit then proceed? You had to, of course, be represented by counsel.
Yes,
You had to make
right.
a decision about who you counsel.
Yes.
How did all that
Well, I spoke again with I came back to New York here, and I spoke again with Marvin Miller, and he and Justice Arthur Goldberg had been colleagues in the steel unions or something. And he said, "Well, if you in fact want to do this, then we might as well get the best lawyer we can find." And we spoke with Justice Goldberg, and he agreed to take our case. And all of a sudden, I had one of the most famous lawyers in the world.
How, once the suit was underway, once the players, for example, the player representatives and other baseball players, your former teammates, for example, once it had all started, did their reaction change at all? Was it ever different?
No, not at all. Which really bothered me, because the trial here in New York in the Supreme Court lasts 6 weeks, and here are some of the most important issues in sports, not just in baseball, being argued in open court. What they feared was guilt by association, I think. And my roommate Bob Gibson was the only one that showed up. Jackie Robinson showed up. Jim Brosnan, several other athletes that were no longer athletes.
Tate 6.
Curt, we're talking about the trial that took place in New York, you said, over a period of 6 weeks. And the attitude of guys who were directly involved. I mean, Major League Baseball players had their careers hanging on the outcome of this proceeding. And yet, no one seemed to be very interested.
That's so extraordinary, because it affected everybody. Every baseball player, and as time went along, other sports as well. But again, you have to understand the chokehold that this contract has over you. And not only are there clauses in this contract that could probably get you fired very easily if they saw fit. They could probably bury you, which would be even worse. And it's just so unfortunate that we found ourselves in that situation. There was just nothing that we could do to get out of it. And I don't blame these guys at all, because the absolute fear of the man upstairs is a very real one.
Looking back at that period, sort of reflecting on it now, when you went into court, after you talked with Goldberg, after you talked perhaps with other people in the legal profession, what did you think your chances were?
I thought my chances were good. Realistically, this is what we were arguing. Should one person be able to own another person for his entire life? Well, Abraham Lincoln solved that problem for us, didn't he? And as a matter of fact, this is what the Supreme Court ruled. Yes, Mr. Flood, they said, you're absolutely right. One person should not be able to own another person, be it a baseball player or whatever. But we're not going to do anything about it. Now, I do imagine that ought to scare everybody in this country when you cannot get relief from the Supreme Court of the United States of America on something as fundamental as you're being bought and sold and or owned. That ought to be a pretty frightening statement to make.
I find in reading the decision, which I've had an opportunity to do, perhaps the only refreshing part of it is the dissenting opinion, which in fact held that your view was indeed correct and that this situation should indeed be correct. Were you in any way at the time encouraged by that?
Well, inasmuch as we lost, that just kind of broke my heart. I had found it necessary to leave this country, and where was I? I guess I was in Spain at the time, Clayton. And you have to understand, the 3 World Series that we played in made this face one that is easily recognizable. And everywhere I would go, I would have to discuss this Supreme Court ruling or discuss its possibilities, if nothing else, and it became just very difficult for me. So I decided to go to Europe for a while and just to kind of take it easy. And they sent me the rulings through the mail, and I was just absolutely floored by it. I just couldn't imagine losing this case. And then afterwards, 2 other baseball players argued the very same issues, and they won several millions of dollars, as a matter of fact, in a lower court.
That was Andy Messersmith of the
Yeah.
Dodgers
And Raleigh Fingers.
Raleigh Fingers, then of the Oakland Athletics.
Yes.
Now, what was the difference between the two? Was there any difference between your argument and theirs? What changed?
Well, I don't know. I would like not to think it was the obvious, them being white and my being black. I would like to think not. I do imagine it had something to do with it. I do think that the powers that be saw the writing on the wall, and that eventually this very unfair clause in our contracts will be changed anyway. So as Messersmith and the other kid came along, they thought they better give us some relief, if nothing else.
Looking at what has changed between the time, let's say 1969, when you initiated this action, and the condition that baseball is in now, which you discussed a little bit, do you think the decision that was rendered by the owners of baseball has put them in an awkward position? Have players now, do you think, asked for too much? Is the game, perhaps the balance tipped the other way? Unfortunately,
you're so right. And as we said before, that is really too bad, because what we initially wanted was just a fair, equitable share of the money that we, as performers and entertainers, or whatever you want to call us, were generating for baseball. Now all that money, the millions of dollars that you read about, it goes right out of baseball and right out of our minor league systems. Higher ticket prices, higher hot dog prices, and it just knocks over dominoes.
So a conflict between the owners and the players came to cost, most of all, the fans.
The fans.
They're the ones that sort of are paying the freight for both sides.
Then they, unless they rebel a little bit, they will forever pay. And with the exception, with one exception, television has dumped a lot of money into all sports, ours especially, because we play so many games.
Yeah.
Roll 27, take 7.
Curt, when I was a kid, there were 16 Major League ball teams, 8 in each league. And I think I knew every player on every team in those two leagues. We were talking earlier, and you said some kids nowadays, as fast as a player's out of sight, he's out of mind.
That's so true. I recall this last spring we were in Arizona, and I was having the chance to talk to some young kids in the outfield, 17, 18-year-old kids, and we were talking about hitting, and I was mentioning some of the great athletes that I played with and against, Willie Mays and Clemente and Jackie Robinson and Roy Campanella, and they knew all of those with the exception of Roy Campanella, and these are little black children, more or less. And I said, "How dare you be black and not know who this great athlete was?" But as you say, it's out of sight, out of mind.
Looking back on a compelling history, certainly for all of us listening to you talk, incredible history that you've experienced. Any regrets? Anything you'd have done differently if you had an opportunity to do it again?
Well, I don't think so. I think whoever chose me to play this role, I think they chose the right guy. I played it right to the end. Going to the Supreme Court cost not only my career, but several millions of dollars as well. And probably the people that suffered right along with me, my family. You know, you take $100,000 out of your wife's yearly checking account, and we all suffered right along with myself. And I do hope that some of these young kids, you know, appreciate Jackie Robinson and Roy Campanella and Frank Robinson and Bill Russell and the black pioneers that made a lot of things really possible for not only for the young blacks that are going to come along, but for young athletes per se.
How would you like people to remember Curt Flood? If somebody 20, 50, 100 years down the road brings up the name Curt Flood in a conversation, how would you like them to remember him?
Well, I hope not for the Supreme Court decision, because that's the only thing I've ever lost in my life. I did play in 3 World Series, and I won the Golden Glove Award 7 times, and that is not easy when you play the same position as Willie Mays. I hope they remember some of the great things, the great times that we had. I played on some fine teams with some fine young men, and more than the Supreme Court decision, I hope they remember that I gave 100% all the time.
If you were asked to describe what the term champion means, what would you say? What would you say to kids? What would you say to people at a party if somebody said, "What is a champion?"
Well, I think a champion is probably a winner in more ways than having more runs on the scoreboard. You can lose the ball game, but you can certainly, as I said before, give of yourself and give of your strength and play the game by the rules and try as hard as you possibly can. I think that is the profile of a champion.
Okay. Yeah, forget that. Let's stop for a moment.
Who would you like for me to do a video on next? What are your thoughts about this video? Please share them in the comments. Please be honest when answering these questions. Share this video with anyone you deem necessary. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.